Tonight, join me as we unpack the Ejura Committee report, which came out yesterday. A lot has happened since the committee finishes work. Finally, we get to know the details. You've heard a bit of it. We're going to be speaking to the people who understand the document so that we can break it down a bit more. But the key question to ask is, so where do we go from here? So often, committee's report had come out on such grievous matters that has led to people's lives being lost or maimed. And then we don't seem to see much happen after that. How do we ensure that this report doesn't suffer the same fate, gathering dust on the shelf? I can name a few. There's a Yawaso West Wagon in recent memory, and there are a few others in the past that indeed in our history has shown that such committees and commissions are important, but they are not the end in themselves, unless there is political will on the part of those who set them up to implement their recommendations and findings. It is just another document to read. Let's get into that. We'll answer that question as we proceed. Now, we know that one of the key findings that was made was the death of Kaka, which many people have said beforehand that triggered the riots and the demonstrations that led to the firing that killed a few people. The committee established that indeed it is that death that triggered the disturbances in Ejura. They also further finds that there was no proper security briefing, which was a key point. The intelligence was also not adequate. There was intelligence failure as well, which had also contributed to the disturbances that we saw, or an escalation of the disturbances. Now, the committee also finds that the situation became fluid and got out of hand for three main reasons, which are important. One, that the police did not work with intelligence sharing. They failed to prepare for the situation on the ground. They just simply went in, and there's a sense in which they relied on the military. They simply failed to prepare because they knew the military was going to be involved somehow and thought the military should just take up the job of doing this. And therefore, they failed to organize adequately in terms of the personnel and equipment that they put there. Now, we also saw a few issues from this report that showed that the response to the military personnel on the 29th of June, they note from the evidence that immediately the personnel touched down, they started firing. Again, warning shots. And remember that this is something that our reporter on the ground, the Rasasari Donko, and his cameraman, at great cost to themselves, had captured. It became a subject to some great controversy. Politicians and political elements attempted to discredit that video. Truth always stands, they say, and it's what the committee also has found, that indeed the military started firing indiscriminately, and this was contrary, by the way, to evidence of the Central Command, which was to the effect that they gave a verbal warning that people did not heed to it before they fired. Erasmus had consistently maintained that based on what he saw, that was not what happened. And the committee came to the same conclusion in the end. We also know that if you look at there were some contradictions between some of the testimonies that we saw before the committee, that the commander of the section that went to the Ejura on the 29th belied the testimony of the Central Command. An examination of some of the video again, and Erasmus's name is mentioned, that my Lab FM colleague, showed clearly that some of the youth were throwing stones and other implement. We saw that on the same show. I broke down that video for you and analyzed the throwing of the stones. But the committee was emphatic that was not enough provocation, not enough justification for the firing of live rounds into the crowd. Now, the firing of live ammunition appeared to have achieved a certain aim, of course, because it dispersed the crowd. It left in its wake several deaths, injuries that we know of now. And they also found that the police station currently existing in Ejura is too small, too inadequate to deal with the threats on the ground. Observed that the MC again failed in his duty. There's a lot of focus on the MC because he himself, in any investigation, is a person of interest. Now, they make a few recommendations that are important. The adequate compensation should be paid to some of those who lost families and got injured in that. Also, the transfer of the district police commander because of the abject failures that the committee had documented. We're going to be tracking this to see. And by the way, the government have had this for so long now, several weeks. It's now become public. And I'm wondering, all the time that they've had it, what have they done with the recommendations? For me, that's a central question we need to start with, because we've seen this already. A part of this have leaked already, but the government have had this for at least 2 months. What have they done with these recommendations? Have these transfers been made? Have the implementations been done? Had compensation started? We're going to get into that very shortly. We further recommend the structural expansion of the Ejura police station, which indeed is one of the things they noticed. Inadequacy of the police station itself created a scenario for this to expand and escalate. A removal of the Ejura Secretary Juma as a municipal chief executive. We've seen this at play already because the president had nominated a different MC for the area. In fact, he did not even put himself up because of all the controversies that was surrounding him. I further recommend that the military establish, review the actions of the section on the ground, which is a key thing, and led by Lieutenant Martin Opoku-Edusei. And remember that all the key findings in here is that the military's conduct was unfortunate. It was inappropriate, is what the committee also found there. Now, they also they recommend the training. For me, this is a big deal. The training of the RECSEC, MUSEC, DISEC officials, Ashanti region in conflict and crisis management. I submit that this particular recommendation is not only for the Ashanti region. Every RECSEC, MUSEC, DISEC across the country requires this training. As you know, the heads of the political heads here are completely inadequate. They just don't have the competence to manage these very complex security issues. And said, then that's the reason why the committee has made its finding. Even though the committee didn't say, everybody watching this and knowing our current history will say, expand this to cover the entire country. Well, we'll speak to the experts about that shortly. Now, the development of a joint standard operating procedure. And this is one of the things that shocks me, because is the committee now recommending an SOP? Because the police and the military, they've been working together for years. Is that to suggest we don't have it? Or we did, but the committee didn't know about it? We'll get into that very shortly. Recommend that the NCCE should also intensify the public education in relation to the rights, obligations, and civil responsibilities of the people in Ejura. Recommendation that all crowd riot control units be made where body comes. We want to see what they see. And so there won't be a doubt over the source of the evidence in evaluating outcomes of such issues. Again, give them some recreation in the community as a way of rechanneling the youthful exuberance, so to speak. My guests are joining me. We're going to get into this. A fascinating conversation about to ensue. Stay with me. My guests joining me via Zoom and also via phone. Professor Kwesi joins me via Zoom as the Director of Faculty of Academic Affairs and Research at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. Also joining me tonight via phone is Nafiu Mohammed. He's a family spokesperson of the social media activist Kaka Macho. And you would recall when I was going through the highlights of the committee's report, that the committee report found that when they evaluated the evidence, they found that it is his death that was a fuel that triggered it. And so we need to hear from him, from the family, on the wake of the report now being made public. Peter Tobu is he himself is a former police officer, and he is a member of the Defense and Interior Committee of Parliament. He joins us via Zoom. But I am delighted to say that we're joined by a member of the Ejura Committee, Dr. Vladimir Chudanso, who joins us via Professor Vladimir Chudanso, who joins us via phone. Prof, thank you for your time here on PM Express. Hello, Prof.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Let me ask you. Um, we've all seen the report that you've altered. I wonder what your expectations are. I guess at this moment we all read it and we're wondering, okay, so what next now? I mean, you must have some expectations, knowing what you said, what you saw, what you evaluated, and what you handed over. What would you say that will be in terms of your own expectations?
Well, I think my expectation should be the expectation of the country. We've done our work, we submitted to government, and we expect that some implementations of recommendations would go a long way to ameliorate the situation and ensure that these things don't happen again. Um, so my expectation would be a satisfaction that the work we did has been accepted and that there is implementation. And I think that's what everybody's waiting
To ask you, I mean, I know you're very experienced in this field. You've done it for years. You are a teacher of the security forces. Did anything surprise you whilst you were doing this work? The sort of evidence that came before you, what you evaluated, what we are now reading. Did anything surprise you?
for. Well, I don't understand the question, but if anything surprised me at all, that's not the expectation of the government and the reason for which the committee was set up. The committee was set up to investigate some surprises cannot be part of anything. I mean, surprises are part of life. And if there is a surprise at all, it formed the basis for some of the conclusions that we came. So surprises are personal. So ab initio, it is surprising that people can do what they did at all to start with. So for me, there are no surprises in life. They have happened. And post ante, what do we do? And that is why the committee was set up.
Hey, well, one of the things that I read in the report that struck me strongly is the standard operating procedure. I mean, from a layman's point of view, reading that document, I see the police and the military working jointly for a long time on my streets and doing Operation Calm Life. It hit me when I read that, is that to suggest that I mean, this operation, this collaboration has been going on without a standard operating procedure.
Well, there are standard operation procedures in any of such combative um, and the combative issues and the kinetic use of force. So there are standard operating procedure for the military, for the police, for any other organizations that have the tendency of using force. But since we have had these joint operations, we haven't had this joint operating procedures where we are all aware of what to use and what not to use. And year in year out, we have been having some of these things. Committees have been set up. The what do you call that one? The one which happened in Accra um, some time back, headed by Professor Dimensa. We have been having that, and it was a little worrying that we're still having those problems.
I mean, just on that last point you made, I mean, you've talked about we see that Yawaso West Wagon. If you go way back, there have been several police commissions of inquiries as well. Yours is a committee. Um, as a member of the committee, I wonder what your take is on the concern many will have that the hope that this committee report should not gather dust on the shelves like others have done in the past. Is that something that crosses your mind?
Well, the point is whether it crosses my mind or not. If it is the general public that must make sure that um, things are done in such a way that we don't repeat these. It doesn't lie within the capacity of any committee to go beyond what their remit is. We submitted our report, and that is it. Unfortunately, there's no constitutional provision that gives any committee any power over government in implementation. It's the public which to do that. I mean, stadium committee, World Cup committee, commissions, whatnot. Governments have white papers on commissions and whatnot and whatnot. No commission has gone to court to force government or beat government on that. So our committee is of no exception. Our expectation is that we have done a very good job and that job should be accepted, and then we move forward from there. So it's up to the Ghanaian public to demand of their government what to do.
Stay with me, Prof. Let me bring you your colleague and friend, Professor Kwesi Ening. Prof. Ening, also thank you very much for joining us. You've spoken about on the back of this report already, but the question that I want to start you off on is that it's been, if I'm not mistaken, at least 2 months since the committee's report was made, was handed over to the government. It was just yesterday they released it. I wonder, some of the recommendations in there, for example, the transfers, we've seen, since the committee's report was handed in, we've seen a change in the administration of the police. Does it strike you as odd that with 2 months in, although government has had a report for so long, there's no communication to suggest, when government released this yesterday, of what work has been done so far in attempting to implement some of the recommendations in this report?
Surprise, Evans. And I've always said this. Historically, levels of implementation of government committees of inquiry are between 10-15% of the recommendations. And I think, Vladimir's point is very clear. They were given a job to do. They've done it. It's up to the government to implement them, and it's up to the Ghanaian public to ensure that their democratically elected government implements their recommendations. Quite a number of the recommendations don't actually cost much money. A lot of the recommendations are practical. They will help all of us. They can help improve the security situation in the country, particularly issues around the training of DISEX and MISEX and MUSEX and REDSEX. I would have expected, a countrywide recommendation dealing with a countrywide training of all these guys, because their levels of security governance knowledge is very low, apart from the statutory security forces or members of the security forces who sit on these committees. Most of the civilians, politicians who lead them have very little clue as to how the National Security Council works and trickles down to their own districts or regional security councils. So really, I think first that releasing the report was useful, and I argued strongly for that it's good for the government, it's good for the people of Ghana, that let's find out what the committee has done. They've released that report with its recommendations. Now, the real issue is, how do we get the recommendations to be implemented? Now, I've also argued that certainly the point that Kake's death resulted from a family feud, I find it quite difficult to accept. I don't know all the evidence that was presented before the committee, but that has come to me as quite a surprise. But apart from that, I think the generality of the conclusions and recommendations are very satisfactory. They are down to earth, they are sensible, they are implementable, and I'm hoping, for the sake of this country, that the recommendations are implemented. Because Ejura, irrespective of the denial by the police, that the underpinning tensions in Ejura are not reflective of what is happening in this country. I believe that responding to the recommendations in a manner that assuages the hurt of the family, reconciles the community, and rebuilds institutional processes around intelligence gathering, analysis, provision of options for intervention and response, and how the police, intelligence, and the military will act in particular instances will help all of us. We need these institutional interventions and lessons learned from Ejura to ensure that it doesn't repeat itself.
I want to bring in Nafiu Mohammed. Prof, thank you. Stay with me, please. I want to bring in Rafiu Mohammed. He's a family spokesperson of Kaka. Nafiu, thank you for joining us via phone. How is the family reacting now to the details of the committee report, the evidence they evaluated, the findings they've made, and recommendations that have been put out?
So, good evening, my learned seniors on this platform. We as a family have actually seen the report.
Okay, we appear to have an audio challenge with him, Nafiu. I can't hear Nafiu. We should fix that. Can I, Nafiu? Nafiu, please make, yes, I can hear you now, yes.
Yeah. So we as a family went through the report, but our main concern it has to do with the issue with saying that the Kakai's death was probably not because of his social media activism, but it's a family feud. So we as a family are disappointed by the continued putting blame on the family to create disaffection for the family and the insistence that Kaka was killed by his own family. We feel unfairly treated by the committee, and we are of the view that the committee has no basis for such conclusions. So this is our take for now.
Nafiu, please stay with me. It's just fair that I get Professor Vladimir Entrudanso's take on this. Professor Entrudanso, how do you respond to the family's concerns with that finding you made?
Stage a protest here. I think the media is wrong and setting the stage. You see, the media should set an agenda to help the country resolve issues. I don't think you should pitch the committee against Kaka's family. In the first place, the committee was not set up to go and find out who killed Kaka. It was a reference point. They came and people were giving, their opinion about who and why Kaka was killed. So once they have brought that, our work was evidence, so finding, conclusions, and recommendations. So as they put this one as evidence, we need to record. A lot of them, the family said they weren't going to come, and the media took this one very seriously, setting the stage for more instability. Now they came. Part of the family was saying, this is what we saw. Another part said, this is not what we... And we said, okay, from all the evidence that we didn't come for that. However, it is plausible to suggest that the family... And that doesn't mean that the family killed. I said, plausible. Listen to the word we used. And that if they have any evidence, we told them thereby that our work is not the work of the CID, and the media should be the one to tell them. Why should Kaka's family be in affront to confrontation with the committee and, for that matter, the government? The constitutionally mandated organ to deal with this is the CID. We didn't want to do their work, but we didn't have that mandate. So Kaka's family's anger should not be directed to the committee. We made it clear to them, to the wife and everybody who came. Those of them who were saying he was killed by the hashtag, whatever, and that's what the media is happy. And I'm saying it's wrong. My brother Koscielny is there. We are experts on these things, and we were warning you from day one. Why should Kaka's family even come in and say they accept the committee's report and we don't accept? It's weird, very, very weird. We didn't go in to find who killed Kaka. We can't have a closure on that, and they decided have not their work. So if this is the tangent of the conversation, then I don't belong here. I'm sorry. Iman. We are setting the wrong agenda. Very, very wrong. We didn't go to look for Kaka's killer. It's the work of the CID, period.
Prof,
our work doesn't stop the CID from going further. Our work doesn't stop the family to seek regress from that point.
Prof, I guess the question had come up only because of this line in the report.
Only because of what?
Only because of this line in the report. And I want to share that because it's important just to clarify that, because the committee said, quote,
I know the line. We were saying it is more plausible to suggest that it's a family feud, and that we didn't accept the report of Abi Wakar.
In fact,
yes.
Not that line. Now, there's a line before that I want to share with you, because it says, we accordingly find that the death of Kaka was not directly linked to his social media activism. That is a finding of fact. And you said that should be the job of the police. And so that is what has caused a bit of the concern there. That's a direct, categorical pronouncement by the committee.
My brother, it doesn't have to. That is the evidence we have. Listen, if we had any different evidence, that's what we have put. That's what we have put. So, and what controversy does that bring? Because that does not stop the police from going forward. Let us not change the channel of communication on this.
But Prof, shouldn't the police then have been left to do this work without the committee making such a categorical finding?
Wait a minute. Our work is part of what the police will rely on. And then will lead to either our finding being wrong or right. But what was before us, we made that statement. I mean, I don't see what's wrong with that. It will help the police.
I asked that because you clarified to us tonight that it wasn't your job to do the police's work for them, and that
absolutely
yes. And so, but when the committee say that we accordingly find that the death was not directly, that's a categorical that links directly to his death. That is the work of the police.
Yes. Wait a minute. That's wrong. Our work starts from Kaka's death and burial. Now, before we started our work, your multimedia, you were the first. The bylines on your listing was suggestive of the fact that the activities of Kaka, for example, hashtag, whatever, and the activity, evidence that were accused before us, some in camera, some in open court, whatever it is, we all saw it. And remember, we have a veritable, experienced judge on the committee. So the evidence was saying that if our work starts from Kaka, then we must make pronouncement on that before we move on. And our pronouncement was said that it must form a basis for further inquiry. And we are talking about plausibility. That's the plausible, because Abi Wakas was making it clear somehow in some of his statements as if it is because of his activity. And then you veer investigations to some corner, and we're saying, don't look at that alone. And I think it ends there. That's not even part of our recommendation. The main problem we had, or the main focus, was how Kaka's death led to what we were to investigate. And it ends there. So to sort of push us in a confrontational way between the committee and Kaka's family, I find that very, very unfortunate. Insults here and there, placards here and there, political parties making this and out of it. I'm sorry about that.
I mean, Prof,
I'm sitting down here. Listen to me. And you can ask Christiane. I'm sitting down here. The tangent you are working on will bring more trouble. Ask Christiane this question.
Just from a human point of view, and I noticed at the committee level, you brought that to bear, encouraging the families, etc. I mean, put yourself in your shoes for a second. When they hear the committee telling them about the likely cause of death, when they're waiting the police's outcome in the proper criminal investigations, that can cause a bit of discomfort among families who've lost a loved one.
Are we saying the killing of Kaka will not cause discomfort?
Definitely does.
So what we're doing is this, that we left off from Kaka as a reference point and what emanated out of that. So the family, if we have even said that, supposing we pinpointed one person in the family whom we think did the job, even supposing we went to that, which is unthinkable anyway, supposing we did that, does that not help the family to focus and to find out who killed their family member? Does it stop them? Does it make the committee so naive, so stupid, that they're claiming they don't even want the report, and then there are placards all over Takoradi and insults to the committee. I wonder how they expect the committee to solve that problem for them when before us we told them in the face categorically that this has happened and we are not there to solve Kaka. That will be solved. But so if they have any other evidence, listen to us. We say if they have any other thing, they should make it available to the police. What's wrong? What's more right than this than the wrong that we are putting to the committee? I'm not trying to defend, but I'm trying to, from where I sit, I'm seeing the tangent that was started as soon as the committee started. And I'm saying we are treading on dangerous grounds. Very dangerous.
I mean,
look, the same thing happened when the Takoradi girls were kidnapped. And we made it look as if even government knew about it. Why have they not been found? Cases lie in the U.S. for 30, 40, years. But the media set a certain agenda which was not correct. And this one, I don't think I agree with you guys, the way you are taking the
I mean, you just, and Prof, you are a friend of the media, just for clarity.
I am a friend of the media, but
just for clarity.
The media is making me feel that I don't think they are helping the intelligentsia to set an agenda where the country will be educated on most of these things. So because now what is happening is serious indiscipline.
Yeah, I mean, just for clarity, Prof, once a report has been issued, somebody is dead, it is just in natural consequence that the family will have to be heard on the matter. And that's the only reason why the family is being heard by the media. That is their reaction to it. We don't dictate that. You know this. It is just a simple reaction to a report, and they are entitled to do so, and we are entitled to give them that space to be heard.
I agree with you perfectly well, but the media must help the family to sue, to ease their pain. We are rather helping the foundry to smolder. We talk to the family. I'm sorry to say this on radio, but I give some small money that I have given to the family. I put myself in their shoes, and we were very sympathetic to them. But a letter came to us, which we knew was doctored, making it clear they won't come to the committee. We said, fine. Then they came in their numbers. Then we told them that ours is not to look for packet killers. The CID will do that. But it's unfortunate that they have gotten their laws. What we can do to help them? But the wife even asked of some of such questions. So what we can do to help them is that if they have any other information, they should give to the CID. They should have the patience. All of a sudden, they took a stand after the committee's work. They taken a stand that the committee was not going to come out with anything first. It was all in the paper. To give ventilation to that. Second, the committee will not do anything because the government will what. And look, we saw all that in the papers. We saw everything. And I was lamenting that because it's my field. They don't feel. And I see this thing elsewhere in every country. And I'm saying, to help the family, it's not the way to go. To help the family, let them understand that the committee's work is not about Qatar. When they understand that, then we know that if the government implements this, we will not see this in Nigeria again. Secondly, if the government takes Qatar, we need to push government to take that one serious. For us to find the killer, for us to find their motive. We are already giving ourselves whatever. That it's like we know what happened already. So, serious. He's a member of the hashtag. Let us not act on that. That's all the committee has said in this report. So can we move forward beyond the report and help the family to find the killers? Can we move forward?
Prof, I am grateful that indeed you joined me to explain this. Thank you very much for explaining the context within which that particular finding was made. I want to quickly bring in Peter Tolbu, obviously a former senior police officer, a member of parliament. He's on the Defense and Interior Committee. Mr. Tolbu, give me a quick response to what we just heard there from Professor Vladimir Chudan. So, of course, explaining the context within which that finding I read to him was made.
Thank you very much, Evans. If I hear you clearly, I want to say good evening to our cherished viewers and good evening to the two professors. Professor Kusiani, my mentor in the area of crime analysis and research, and my own professor from Legon throughout to where he is now, Professor Amchidanso. We've known each other for years. And I want to state as a matter of fact that for me, what the committee did was based on the terms of reference that was given to the committee. The three-man committee or three-member committee was set up with defined terms of reference, with some sense of agency. And Justice Kumsin led the team into Ejura, and they did what they had to do and called for extension of time, and finally came up with a report. And basically, the report respected or respects the terms of reference. And they've gotten some findings, they've made some recommendations. And what excites me this evening, Evans, I'm so excited that the committee concluded professionally that the committee did not consider what the youth of Ejura did as extreme provocation to warrant the military firing live ammunition into the crowd. I also got a bit worried when they said the district police commander was incompetent on the ground. Understanding police structure, command and control, if the incompetence of a district commander is unveiled or unraveled or revealed by an outside body, his supervisor, the divisional commander, and the regional commander must be asked questions. Because if the district commander is incompetent, and it only took this simple operation to reveal his incompetence, then it means that supervision had a bigger challenge. If you are supervising a commander under you, and he's so incompetent and there was no query, I expected that immediately after the Ejura incident, if the district commander was indeed incompetent, the Ejura committee or the Justice Kumsin committee would have found a query from the divisional commander to the district commander, asking him to explain why disciplinary action should not be taken against him for certain things that he did unprofessionally, or certain things that he did that demonstrated lack of discretion and lack of professionalism. That I have not seen. So for me, the committee has done its work.
Hello, Peter Tobu. We may have lost him there on the Zoom connection. I want to give a quick word to Professor Inin. He had also, at the beginning of the conversation, touched on that finding as one of the areas he had concerns with. Now we've heard from his colleague, Professor Vladimir Chudanso, explain it. Prof. Inin, does that address the concern you raised earlier? Sorry, Prof. Kindly unmute for me.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, I'm unmuted.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Mr. Tobu, please hold on for me briefly. Let me hear Professor Inin. We lost you for a second. Yes, Professor Inin?
No, I think it's important that the family's pain is assuaged and that there are professionals, psychologists who begin to talk to the family and to help them with the healing process. That's one part of it. The second part of it is to bring in the technical people, the forensic experts, the interrogators, and I think Honorable Tobu can speak better to this, to begin the painstaking work of finding who actually perpetrated this heinous crime that triggered this violence that placed Ghana in a very negative light internationally. And I think it's important for all the institutions involved, and particularly the political class that has oversight and failed consistently in a cascading manner of failure, that we can come to grips with what really happened, why the duty of care failed to take place, how intelligence failed, and above all else, why political decision-making was such a disastrous failure, leading to the insertion of the military and the loss of lives. That is an aspect that the report and its recommendations have not touched, but that shouldn't limit us from discussing and raising those concerns, because they can happen elsewhere until we deal with it.
I mean, there's some further. Peter Tobu, yes, I lost you briefly. Can you wrap up your point for me on you believe the supervision is a key point. If you're focusing on the commander in the district, you must also deal with his supervisors. Well, I seem to still have a challenge with him, but I want to quickly take a break. When I return, I will deal with some of the key other findings that we saw in the document, particularly what appears to be both the military and the police. What appears to be contradictions, and what the committee found in cases that they found evidence. I mean, I'm struggling to use the word lied, but that's what it is. That the police and the military came before the committee, told stories that they couldn't, the actual evidence on the ground contradicted. And the recommendation of transfers that must happen, will that deal with the root causes of the problem? Stay with me. You're still live here on PM Express. My guest, Professor Kwesi Aning, also with me is Nafiu Mohammed, is a family spokesperson for Kaka. Peter Tobu, a former police officer, senior police officer, and a member of the Defense and Interior Committee in Parliament. Earlier, we had Professor Vladimir Tredanso, who is a member of the committee, explaining the context within which they made some of the recommendations. I want to quickly bring in Nafiu Mohammed, a spokesperson, very briefly on the family and moving forward. Nafiu Mohammed, so bottom line, your relative, of course, is still dead, and we know that the police have been investigating this. The committee report is out. You've expressed your concerns with it. The family, what sort of support are you receiving now in terms of dealing with this grief, but also being in touch with the police in terms of updates on resolving the unfortunate murder of your relative?
Ivan, to clearly speak to this fact, from the 26th of June, since the incident happened, there is no communication between the family of Kaka and the police.
Okay.
There has not been any formal communication. All issues you see we are putting out there in the media was just heard on the media. Mostly, we contact the police to find out what is really happening. Only to be told that they are investigating. Although there are a series of issues we find worrying about the investigations of Kaka, of which we as a family have written a letter to the IGP, taking his audience to sit down with him to highlight some of the things happening within the police service we are not happy with. We were not given that opportunity. Then we sought the audience of the National Chief Imam, and he did give us that opportunity to come. So you can see clearly, this is convincingly telling us, the content of the report is really telling us that now the total blame is on the family. The total blame. And this is the confirmation of what we are saying, because that is what the foot soldiers of a political party, MPP, are saying in Ejura. Now, when the report was out yesterday, you just come and see how communicators of the party were jubilating that they have been vindicated by the committee. So how worrying is this issue? Now, the committee itself says that you should be a witness to the incident before you can testify before it. But there is one person who appeared before them, Aminu Mohammed, who was outside the country when the incident happened. And he was there to give his testimony in camera. He has no credibility. He even went to the extent of even tarnishing the image of the police, saying in part of his witness statement that Kaka's mother paid a bribe to the police to get Edith released. So the committee overlooked this allegation, which is entire detriment to an insult to the police. This person has no credibility.
Yeah.
He needs not even before the committee.
Yeah, I mean, Nafiu, I get a clear sense that definitely more needs to be done to deal with the pain and the grief that a family still feels. And Professor Aning had touched on that. And from everything you've said, and I come back to what Prof. Aning said earlier, this needs to be taken a bit more seriously, and a lot of urgency needs to be attached in trying to get him back to the community to deal with that grievance that the family still feels surrounding the way this has happened. And I take a note of what you said about how communicators, political communicators in the constituency or in the district had reacted to this. That definitely is something that the authorities should look at. Peter Tobu, let me ask you, is really about now the most important question. This committee report, the government had known it for 2 months. What's the way forward? What should happen now, knowing what we now know from the committee's report? Hello, Mr. Tobu. Kindly unmute for me, please.
Can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Great. Thank you very much, Evans. I think what is exciting is that the police can actually use the Justice Kumsin's committee report as a document, a fundamental document to aid in the criminal investigations of the 2 murder cases. Murder case number 1 is the killing of Kaka. And number 2, the killings of the 2 young men on the day of the demonstration. Why am I saying so? In the committee, it is very clear in one of their findings that they've come to a conclusion that the committee did not consider what the youth of Ejura did as extreme provocation. And it didn't warrant any firing of live ammunition into the crowd.
Yeah.
So the 2 people who died, anybody who died in Ghana, first of all, we say it's a murder case until it's otherwise proven. So the police can take the committee report and look into it and see, probably there will be some things to support their prima facie investigations of the 2 murder cases. Number 2, we need to understand police structure. If you say that the district commander had demonstrated incompetence, and there is no query from the divisional commander, either the divisional commander is also incompetent, or there is something higher that we have to take a look at. But Evans, the greatest problem we have in the security architecture of this country is the mess that we have created in the Security Council. Whether it is National Security Council, whether it's Regional Security Council, whether it's Municipal or District Security Council. The fact is that these security councils are structured in such a way that there are some components in there. The chairman of the Security Council, whether it's national, or it's regional, or municipal, or district, the chairman of any security council is not the council. The chairman is the head, a political head that is responsible for policy and politics. But the operation and administration of all these institutions put together under a Security Council is distinct and must be respected. If we don't do that, we create political mess in security situations, and we give bad names to the security agencies, and gradually the whole country will be in a mess.
Let me give a final word to Professor Enin. Prof, for where you sit and what we've read, what should be the way forward now on the back of this report?
Well, I think this report provides a broad tableau, a broad basis to reconsider some of the things that we have shelved over time. The structure of policing, personnel, decision-making, and even more importantly, the structures that should underpin security decision-making. But also the report does point out that security is a collaborative venture, that the statutory forces and society, communities, together must work to ensure that there is peace that allows all of us to go about our businesses as optimally as possible.
Prof, thank you very much. Prof is in of course, with the KIPTC, families rep. Nafi, I'm grateful. Prof Peter Tobu. And of course, earlier, we're joined by the member of the committee, that put together this report, Professor Vladimir Tredan. So enjoy the rest of your evening.
Hello, my name is Nathaniel Atto. You can catch up with all the fun and inspiration on the Joy Sports link here on Joy 99.7 FM, together with all other shows over and over again. It's very simple. All you need to do is go to myjoyonline.com/podcast and relive all of those fun moments over and over again. Joy 99.7 FM, your radio for discerning listeners.
Joy 99.7.